My name is Victoria White. I'm 28, and I like to think of myself as a woman who keeps her life deliberately ordered. Every dollar, every choice, every relationship measured, cataloged, and controlled. The irony, of course, is that no amount of control could have prepared me for the message that blinked onto my phone that Thursday night. I was halfway through my Bachelorette trip, perched on a balcony overlooking the city lights with the hum of distant traffic and laughter from the streets below. My friends were talking about everything from hair salons to wedding dress fittings, their voices lilting and carefree. And then my phone buzzed. It was Charles, my fiancé. The text was short, almost casual in tone, but it hit like a freight train. Victoria, this is awkward. I ran into Lara. We ended up at her hotel and we slept together. I realized I'm not over her. We talked all night. We're getting back together. Sorry this is last minute. I won't be back for the wedding. I read it 3 times, maybe 4, trying to find a glitch in the system, a typo that would absolve me from the reality spelled out in plain, cruel words. Slept together. The words weren't even in bold. They didn't need to be. My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't shake. There was a peculiar, cold clarity, as though my body had gone into a protective, frozen state. Before I could even blink, another text arrived. BTW, I'm keeping the ring. It's a clean break gift, and I can probably use it with Lara. Don't try to contact me. It's better this way. Becca will swing by for my things next week. The ring. The $80,000 engagement ring. The one Charles had insisted on designing himself to make a statement. The one I had gifted, piece by piece, month by month, through $2,500 payments that I had set up without ever questioning the arrangement. I stared at the screen, and then I typed, "Thank you." Simple, cold, final. I didn't feel the need to cry, to scream, to beg. There was nothing to negotiate, no place to plead. This was the final chapter of a story that Charles had written for himself, and I refused to co-author a single line. My hands shook, not with fear, but with focused resolve. I opened my banking app, located the recurring $2,500 payment labeled Charles Ring, and canceled it immediately. No delay, no hesitation. My gift had been conditional. Engagement, commitment, partnership. He had unilaterally broken the contract. That was that. Next, I pulled up the PDF of the jeweler's statement, attached it to a new email, and addressed it to Charles. Subject, our arrangement, body. Per your text, our arrangement is over. This is all yours now. Thanks. Click sent. The rest of the evening became a cinematic montage in my mind. The hotel room blurred around me, the chatter of friends fading to a background hum, the city lights turning into streaks of gold and white as I mapped out my next steps. I called a lawyer, Alex, the one my brother had recommended for his divorce. Calm, efficient, no drama. I needed to protect my apartment, my finances, and my sanity. Charles's message had left me standing in the middle of my life with the foundation pulled out from under me, and I wasn't about to stumble. By the time I returned home from my trip, everything had changed. I entered my apartment, the air still, familiar, safe, and I changed the smart lock code. I reviewed the wedding spreadsheets, canceled the caterer, the photographer, the venue. Deposits totaling nearly $15,000 vanished like mist. I stood over the box of invitations we had painstakingly designed, cream-colored, hand-inscribed, symbols of dreams now meaningless. I carried them to the recycling chute and let them fall. The sound of them hitting the bottom felt like the final punctuation on a story that Charles had no right to continue. By 2 a.m., I had taken care of everything I could control. Email confirmations of canceled vendors, locked doors, an appointment set with Alex for 9 a.m. the following morning. The city outside my window was quiet. The silence inside my apartment was deafening, and yet it felt good. For the first time since I met Charles, I wasn't angry. Not really. I felt clear-headed, almost clinical. Betrayal didn't have to shatter me. It could refine me. I made coffee, looked at the skyline, and let the enormity of the situation sink in. He was on a plane with her, probably admiring the very ring he now burdened her with. And I was waiting, calm, precise, in full control of what mattered. My life. Foreshadowing hovered in the silence. This was only the beginning. He had underestimated the cost of betrayal. He had underestimated me. The flight back felt surreal, like I was traveling not just through miles, but through a kind of personal reckoning. Each mile closer to my apartment tightened the knot in my chest, not with fear, but with purposeful clarity. This was my life, my home, my finances, and Charles had just declared war with a text. Stepping into the apartment, I let the door close behind me and felt the silence settle like a protective blanket. 5 years I had spent building this space, carefully curated furniture, the soft hum of the heating system, every shelf aligned just so. No one had a claim here but me, and now I had to ensure that remained true. I walked straight to the smart lock panel and entered a new code. My pulse didn't quicken. I was methodical, deliberate. The world had shifted, but I hadn't. Next came the lawyer call. I dialed Alex's number, feeling the words in my throat like sharpened arrows. "I need immediate consultation," I said, my voice calm, steady. "Engagement terminated, cohabitation issue, asset protection, all of it." Alex's voice was measured. "We'll handle it. Tell me everything, step by step." I laid it out. The texts, the ring, the canceled engagement, the deposits already paid. I recounted Charles's exact words, the tone, the coldness. Alex listened and responded with strategic clarity, outlining steps for securing the apartment, protecting my finances, and preparing for potential legal attacks. Then came the spreadsheets, wedding plans meticulously charted over months, now reduced to a series of cancellations. Caterer, $20,000. Venue, $30,000. Photographer, $8,000. Non-refundable deposits, $15,000, evaporated in an instant. I emailed every vendor individually, professional, polite, and final. Per the dissolution of the engagement, I am canceling the event scheduled for date. I understand all deposits are non-refundable as per our contract. Please confirm cancellation. I watched the sent icon glow like a beacon. There was no turning back. Walking to the dining table, I paused at the box of cream-colored invitations. Each card, perfectly printed, perfectly inscribed, now useless, a monument to a life I thought I shared. I carried them to the recycling chute. The thud as they hit the bottom felt almost symbolic, a quiet declaration of independence. With the apartment secured and the financial fallout in motion, I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window. The city sprawled beneath me in glowing grids, distant cars and streetlights a reminder that the world moved on, indifferent to my personal betrayal. And yet, here I was, moving forward with precision. By 2 a.m., I had completed everything I could control. Smart lock changed, lawyer briefed, vendors canceled, emails sent, statements attached, proof documented. I leaned back, letting the fatigue wash over me. But even in that exhaustion, there was a strange satisfaction. The first measured victory in a war Charles had started with his own indiscretions. I reflected on the $25,000 lost, the $10,000 I had already gifted toward the ring, and the $15,000 deposits gone forever. A painful sum, yes, but nothing compared to the loss of trust, and nothing compared to the lessons learned. Betrayal, I realized, wasn't just about money. It was about who holds power when the illusion of love ends. I made a mental note. Every future financial engagement, every shared asset, every expectation of trust must be conditional. And then, as the city lights flickered beneath me, I felt the subtle thrill of clarity. I wasn't just reacting, I was anticipating. Charles might think I was paralyzed by shock or grief. He was wrong. I could almost picture him, somewhere across the country, with Laura, likely admiring the very ring he had claimed for her, believing himself clever, triumphant. But the irony, I smiled to myself, would soon dawn. He had underestimated the precision and calm fury of the woman he thought he could break. Tonight, the apartment was mine. Tomorrow, the legal letters would start. The following week, every remaining thread of the engagement would be cut. I had won control of my life, one methodical step at a time. And deep inside, beneath the exhaustion and the quiet heartbreak, there was a seed of anticipation. For the day, Charles would realize that betrayal has a cost far higher than he ever imagined. 6 days after the text, the quiet that had wrapped around my apartment began to fracture. The calm I had meticulously curated was challenged, not by Charles himself, but by the extensions of his entitlement, his mother, Celeste, and Lara's enabler, Becca. The first intrusion came in the form of a voicemail from Becca, Charles's former maid of honor. Victoria, hi. So, Lara, is having a bit of a problem. Her card got declined at dinner, and she got some email from the jeweler saying her payment is late. She's freaking out. You always pay it, right? Can you just help her? I listened, letting the words hang in the air, their absurdity sinking in like a stone in water. Her tone was apologetic, pleading, almost sweet, but beneath it was the unspoken expectation. Victoria, save her, like you always did. I didn't call back. I didn't reply. I let the voicemail sit. Then came the call from Celeste. Her voice was sugar-coated venom. Victoria, darling, I'm hearing some very confusing things about Charles. She's on her trip, just relaxing before the big day. I cut her off, sharp but measured. There is no big day. Charles ended the engagement via text. He is with Lara now. Everything else will go through my lawyer, Alex. Silence. 10 seconds of disbelief, then her tone sharpened. You promised to pay for that ring. You're punishing her for a little wobble. She can't handle this. You're cruel. I held the phone with deliberate calm. Celeste, the ring is her credit line, her responsibility. My payments were contingent on the engagement. Charles terminated it. The condition is broken. This is not punishment. It's the law. Her shriek was theatrical, a storm of entitlement. You trapped her. She doesn't have $2,500 lying around. Victorian. I stopped her. From now on, all communication goes through Alex. Goodbye. I hung up, blocked her number, and felt a wave of clarity and control wash over me. This was the moment I realized. The real battle wasn't just about the ring or the wedding. It was about defining the boundaries of respect, entitlement, and consequence. Later that evening, the doorbell buzzed. I froze. Instinctively, I went to the intercom. Victoria, open the door. The code isn't working. It was Lara. Her voice trembled with fury and desperation. I activated the intercom. All communication will be through Alex. You are not on the lease. You need to schedule pickup of your belongings. There was silence. Then another voice. We're calling the police. Half an hour later, 2 officers were at my door. Calm, tired, routine. I met them in the hallway, holding the deed to my apartment. Everything was legal, documented. Lara was teary-eyed and furious. Charles nowhere to be seen. Celeste looked like she was ready to battle. The officers listened, read the text I showed them, and reviewed the situation. By the end, the verdict was clear. Civil matter, Victoria's apartment, her rules. Even then, Lara tried to spin the narrative. He's stolen my ring. He's punishing me. I pointed calmly to the ring on her finger, the very ring she had insisted on, and opened a credit line for herself. You are wearing it. You are responsible for it. I am not holding anything hostage. The officer nodded. The tension hung like fog in the hallway. They left. Alone in my apartment afterward, I let myself exhale. The first wave of entitlement had broken against the barrier I had built. But this was just the beginning. Their attacks would grow sharper, more insidious. And I would be ready. For now, I brewed a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and watched the city breathe. The chaos outside, the calls, the shrieks, the entitlement, could not touch the control I had reclaimed. I allowed myself a brief, satisfied smile. They thought they could manipulate me with guilt, drama, and noise. They were wrong. Tomorrow, the legal letters would follow. The week after, their paper trail would crumble. I would be methodical, calm, unyielding. I had learned the truth. Betrayal is expensive, but so is the price of letting someone control you after it. And Victoria White never loses control of her life. 2 weeks in, and the quiet was gone. The initial shock of betrayal had transformed into a cold, passive-aggressive war waged by Charles, Lara, and Celeste, though Charles himself remained conveniently absent. Their tactics were subtle, insidious, and relentless. The first assault came via mail fraud. Lara had changed her billing addresses back to my apartment for credit cards, subscriptions, fashion catalogs, every piece of paper a claim that she still lived here. I stared at the stack, a bizarre mixture of entitlement and delusion. It could have rattled anyone else, not me. I boxed everything up, labeled Return to Sender, recipient does not reside at this address, and sent it back. Alex also dispatched formal letters to her parents' address. Any further mail to Victoria White's apartment would be considered harassment. Next, the sympathy play. Our wedding photographer emailed, offering to credit Lara's deposit toward a new couple's shoot. The audacity! I laughed quietly, then forwarded the email to Alex. One response from him. Any attempt to repurpose Ms. Lara's lost deposits is conversion. Cancellation stands. The photographer's apology was almost pitiful. This, I realized, was the pattern. Every entitled act had a subtle veneer of righteousness. Then came the legal threat, the pièce de résistance of their escalation. Alex handed me the formal demand letter. Unlawful eviction, emotional distress, $10,000 damages, half the furniture, high-end sound system, art pieces, the $80,000 ring, Victoria fraudulently induced payments. I read it calmly, sipping my coffee. My pulse didn't quicken. Each claim was a mirror reflecting their delusion, not reality. Alex leaned back. Precision strike, Victoria. Every claim has a counter. Everything they assert will be dismantled fact by fact. We began with the eviction. We attached Lara's own text. LOL, sorry this is so last minute. Getting back together with Victorian. Words of intent, deliberate and unambiguous. The police report confirmed it was a civil matter. Property, fully documented. Every item purchased from my accounts before she moved in. Furniture, electronics, art, nothing belonged to her. The ring, conditional gift, contingent on engagement. She had breached that condition. Alex labeled her own words as Exhibit A, intent to abandon. My formal acceptance of her new terms was Exhibit B. For 2 full days, the silence was almost surreal. Then came a call from Victorian, Lara's new partner. Block number, desperation. You have to help her. She's insane. Calls from collectors nonstop. The debt. She's in over $50,000 already. I listened once, then set my jaw. I can't. She's responsible. She willingly entered that agreement. I'm not paying for her poor decisions. Even as Victorian sputtered and begged, I felt the clarity of my boundaries. The ring, the debt, the entitlement. All consequences of her own making, not mine. The civil standby to retrieve her belongings loomed. Alex and I meticulously planned every detail. Boxes packed, labeled, itemized, clothes, shoes, laptops, toiletries, everything she claimed. Every box a statement of precision and control. When Friday arrived, the police officer, Alex, Celeste, Becca, and Lara appeared. Victorian was nowhere in sight, perhaps realizing the game was bigger than he anticipated. The officer's instructions were firm. No stepping inside, no harassment. Everything in boxes, everything accounted for. I watched, quiet, as they moved through the entryway. Celeste tried to overstep, to push past me into the apartment. Alex intervened smoothly, physically blocking her, verbal authority unshakable. Lara's moment of confrontation finally arrived. She paused over a small box of jewelry, then looked at me, eyes wide, voice trembling. You did this? I held her gaze calmly. Did what? Her voice rose, shrill. You planned this. You let me take on the debt. You ruined me. I let the pause stretch, letting my words land like cold steel. I didn't ruin you, Lara. You chose the ring, opened the credit line, and ended the engagement. I agreed to your plan willingly. I set no traps. You set them yourself. Tears streamed down her face, but there was no plea, no understanding, only the recognition of consequence finally piercing through entitlement. Celeste tried to interject, but Alex cut her off. You have your belongings. You need to leave now, or the officer will escort you. Lara's final glare burned, but she turned away, collecting her boxes. The elevator doors closed. Silence returned, heavy and complete. I exhaled, letting the apartment envelope me again. The ring still sparkled on her finger, now a symbol of her own folly, not a threat to me. The chaos outside, the calls, the legal threats, all dissipated in the wake of methodical, unshakable control. I had reclaimed my life, piece by piece, boundary by boundary, and the lesson was stark. Betrayal carries a cost, but so does allowing chaos to invade your calm. And Victoria White never loses the narrative of her own story. The elevator doors closed behind Lara, Celeste, and Becca. Silence reclaimed the apartment, but this time it was different, heavier, quieter, and satisfying. 14 boxes stacked neatly in the hallway, a clear line drawn between chaos and control. I sank onto the sofa, feeling the weight of 2 weeks of escalation lift. The $80,000 ring still gleamed on Laura's hand, her asset, her liability, her responsibility. I had no illusions about victory being glamorous. This was about justice, boundaries, and surviving betrayal intact. Alex stayed a few minutes longer, tidying the last pieces of paperwork. "They've got no case," he said, straightening his tie. "She'll likely have to declare bankruptcy before 31. The ring, the debt, her mess, not yours." I nodded, allowing myself a faint smile. The absurdity of it all, the entitlement, the threats, the legal theater, could have crushed anyone else. But I had navigated it. Every email, every call, every calculated step had been my armor. The first night alone after the retrieval, I brewed coffee, wrapped myself in a throw, and stared out the window at the city lights. The apartment felt alive, not silent. My space, my rules. The losses, $15,000 in wedding deposits, $10,000 in ring payments, were price tags of experience, not failure. I reflected on the sequence, the text that changed everything, calm but lethal in its finality. The legal letters, executed with precision and calm resolve. The civil standby, a stage on which entitlement crumbled under methodical planning. The emotional clarity, the realization that boundaries are worth more than obedience to someone else's drama. For a long moment, I just breathed, allowing the peace of regained control to settle in my chest. Betrayal had a price, but so did letting go of the chaos. A week later, I started painting the living room. A blank canvas, fresh color, a tangible manifestation of moving forward. My phone stayed silent, my apartment quiet, the lesson indelibly etched into my life. I thought of Charles, Laura, Celeste, and the wreckage they left behind. There was no satisfaction in revenge, no glee in watching them struggle with their own choices. There was only calm certainty, the knowledge that integrity and boundaries had carried me through. I called my parents, my brother. The voices on the other end were warm, supportive, relieved. For the first time in weeks, I felt free, untethered from someone else's chaos, untangled from a life that had tried to consume me. And the ring? Laura would figure it out. High interest, penalties, mounting debt. Her new future partner, Victorian, already learning the hard truth about financial responsibility. I allowed myself a quiet, private satisfaction. Justice, without malice, perfectly executed. I poured a glass of wine and sat on the balcony. The city stretched endlessly below, lights flickering like stars. The apartment was mine. The life I had painstakingly built, my decisions, my space, intact. Betrayal had visited me, uninvited, abrupt, and sharp. But in its wake, I had discovered my own resilience, my capacity for calm under fire, and the power of boundaries, enforced without anger, without hysteria, without losing myself. Victoria White, 32, engaged, abandoned, financially impacted, but unbroken, smiled into the dark night. The ring would outlast them all, not as a gift, but as a monument to the consequences of entitlement and deception. And I finally moved forward,